that it's a fair question to ask. Does God desire that our nations are successful? If you listen to Christians and messages today from the pulpit, you might even wonder if God cares much about how nations are doing. And so this is one of the first things that jumped out at me when I started reading in Genesis. And so in Genesis 1:28, your folks can jump there, you'll see that God tells Adam and Eve that he wants the nations that come after them to be fruitful, to increase in number, to fill the earth. And in that passage, they say, subdue the earth. Now, God repeats this after the flood, when things were a disaster. And honestly, what we're supposed to ask as Christians about the whole flood account, we're supposed to ask, so what is supposed to give us a reason to believe that things could be different after the flood? And because it was a mess. Society was in chaos. And the answer is found in Genesis 9, 1 through 7. And in that passage, God repeats almost word for word that he wants the nations to follow, to be fruitful, to increase in number, to fill the earth. And then in verses 5 and 6, he says, I demand an accounting for the shedding of innocent blood. And if you read through that and you realize God is a God of justice, he wants people to live under justice because he wants people to be able to go on their own personal faith journey. And the only way you can do that is if you're able to live without this fear of being killed by your neighbor. And by the way, food, clothing, and shelter is pretty important too. So, God has set this up. And in Genesis 5 and 6 is where we find the institution of civil government. That's where it first shows up. And by the way, no theologian I've ever talked to disagrees with that statement. And so from there forward, you learn about, well, what does government look like? And how do you start a government, which is the question you asked me. But I wanted to set the stage for folks that when you see nations that are under judgment, that are being conquered or that are doing poorly, these are nations that are being judged by God. And so, I never wanted to be in trouble with my dad. And as a nation, I don't think we want to be in trouble with the Lord. We want to be faithful. We'd like to go on our own, live in peace and go on our own faith journey.